Today, we're looking at something pretty specialized, a financial career path in India that's just exploding. We're talking about becoming an alternative investment fund distributor, or AIF distributor.
That's right.
So if you're maybe thinking about moving into more sophisticated wealth management, where things are really moving fast, this deep dive is for you. We want to give you a clear roadmap.
Absolutely. Our mission today is basically to take all this quite dense source material we've got and really distill down, make it actionable for you, especially if you're new to this.
Yeah, we want to explain the how, but maybe more importantly, the why. Like, why is now such a potentially great time to jump in?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is an AIF? Because it sounds quite different from, say, your standard mutual fund.
It is, fundamentally. An AIF, an alternative investment fund, is basically a privately pooled investment vehicle. Think of it like capital collected privately, usually from high net worth individuals, HNIs, and other sophisticated investors.
Okay, so private money.
Right. And that money gets invested based on specific, often quite complex strategies. Could be private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, that sort of thing. We generally break them down into three main types.
Categories, right?
Yes, category one, which includes things like venture capital, infrastructure funds. Then category two, that's more private equity, real estate funds, debt funds. And finally, category three, which covers hedge funds and strategies involving complex trading.
Got it. And the growth figures here are, well, they're pretty staggering. Our sources are showing that the total assets under management, the AUM, for AIFs in India, it grew almost 20 times.
20-fold, yeah.
In about a decade. From roughly 60,000 crore rupees back in 2013 to over 11.5 lakh crore in 2024.
And that pace, it hasn't really let up. Cumulative investments actually crossed 5.38 lakh crore by March 2025. That's still maintaining a really robust, 32% year-on-year growth.
Wow.
When you see growth like that, it screams opportunity. It signals a huge need for the people connecting those funds with the capital. That's the distributors.
Okay, let's unpack that then. What's really driving this massive expansion? And importantly, for someone maybe listening and thinking about this, why does this growth potentially make it a good moment to get started?
Well, it looks like sustainable long-term potential is the key driver here. Forecasts are incredibly ambitious. Some sources see India's alternative investment market possibly growing 5 times bigger to potentially $2 trillion by 2034. Even if you take a more conservative view, the projection is still for AUM to nearly double, maybe hitting around $247 billion by 2029.
Doubling that kind of market in just 5 years. Yeah, that's definitely somewhere you might want to plant your flag, so to speak.
And a big reason why this growth feels sustainable and why it's such a big chance for new distributors is this idea of underpenetration.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, look at mature global markets, right? There, alternative investments often make up over 10% of the country's GDP. In India, we're currently only around 4%.
Ah, okay, so there's a huge gap.
A massive gap. And that gap basically signals enormous potential upside. There's just so much room to grow before we even reach global averages. For distributors building their networks now, that's the opportunity. Some forecasts even see AIFs representing maybe 15% of total wealth management AUM by 2027.
And the pool of potential clients is growing too, isn't it? The actual people who can invest in these funds.
Definitely. The HNI and ultra HNI population in India expected to pretty much double in the next 5 years. India is actually projected to lead global growth in its ultra high net worth individual population. A 73% increase is forecast. Just a massive wealth creation happening.
With more potential clients coming online all the time.
And what's also really interesting is where the money is coming from. There's been a real shift towards domestic confidence. Indian investors' participation has climbed steadily. It's now up to about 63.3% of the total capital committed in FY25, up from around 59% the year before.
So it's not just foreign money flowing in anymore.
No, increasingly it's India's own wealth creation that's becoming the main engine powering these AIFs, which is a very positive sign for stability.
And that capital, it's going into some really exciting areas. You mentioned the types of funds. As a distributor, you're basically getting exposure to India's core growth story. Wow.
Exactly. You're channeling funds into sectors like fintech, health tech, renewable energy, real estate is big, IT and IT-enabled services. You really are a kind of gateway between that sophisticated wealth and the businesses shaping India's economic future.
That's a powerful position to be in.
It really is. And that leads us nicely into, the core value proposition for the distributor themselves. We need to talk performance, and we definitely need to talk income potential.
Right. Let's talk returns first. Performance is probably the key argument you'd make to an investor, isn't it? What do the sources say about how AIFs stack up against maybe a typical large cap mutual fund?
The difference is pretty stark, actually. The data suggests around 75% of AIFs have managed to generate positive alpha. That means returns above their benchmark or market average.
Okay, three-quarters beating the market.
Compare that to traditional large cap mutual funds, where apparently 51% have actually failed to deliver alpha. They've underperformed. So AIFs, especially those category I and II funds we mentioned, they're often structured specifically to target higher internal rates of return, or IRR. That makes them inherently attractive to those high-value clients looking for something different, something potentially outperforming.
Superior returns. Okay, so that brings us to potentially superior compensation for the person distributing these funds. If someone listening is maybe working in the mutual fund space right now, what kind of commission are they typically looking at?
Well, mutual fund commissions, they usually range from maybe 0.05% up to perhaps 2% of the assets under management, the AUM. It often means you need a really large volume of clients to generate significant income.
Right, lots of smaller accounts. And what about AIF distribution? What do commissions look like there historically?
Yeah. Historically, AIF distribution has commanded much higher commissions, often paid upfront, sometimes in the range of 4% to 5% of the actual amount the client commits to investing.
Wow, upfront on the commitment, not just a trail on the AUM.
Exactly. Now, the industry is professionalizing, things are evolving, but the fundamental earning potential remains substantially higher, mainly because of that minimum ticket size requirement.
Okay, that ticket size seems like the real game changer here. You said the minimum investment for most AIFs is 1 crore rupees.
That's the general rule, yes. For angel funds, it can be lower, maybe 25 lakh, but for most Cat I, 2, and 3, it's 1 crore minimum. So you're dealing with a smaller number of very sophisticated, very wealthy clients.
Let's make that concrete. The sources had an example, right? Comparing MF and AIF income.
Yeah, it's a good illustration. Imagine a mutual fund distributor. Maybe they manage a portfolio of 5 crore rupees in AUM. Even at a decent commission, say 0.60%, their annual earning might be around 3 lakh rupees. Now, think about an AIF distributor. If they manage to bring in just, say, 3 or 4 clients who each commit the minimum 1 crore, their income potential just explodes because they're often compensated on that larger committed capital, maybe up front. The numbers get significantly higher with far fewer client relationships.
So it's really about quality over quantity. Specialization.
Precisely. It's a different model.
Yeah.
Focus on depth with fewer high-value clients.
And beyond the financial incentive, which is obviously compelling, what about the career growth itself? What kind of skills do you develop?
Oh, the professional growth is tremendous. You immediately start gaining specialized knowledge across a whole range of complex asset classes: private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, maybe even distressed assets, private credit.
Things you wouldn't typically touch in standard retail distribution.
Exactly. And that deep specialization, it offers, frankly, better job stability in the long run. It also positions you for potentially global exposure because these strategies and asset classes are often international. You're constantly learning, dealing with sophisticated concepts.
Which makes sense why there's a formal certification process involved.
Absolutely. The regulator, SEBI, demands a certain level of professional competence here.
Okay, so this is where it gets really practical. If someone's listening, they're excited by this potential. What are the actual concrete steps they need to take to get certified and, get started?
Right. So first off, let's talk about helpful foundations. They aren't strictly mandatory, but having a strong educational background definitely helps. A bachelor's or master's in finance, commerce, business management, that provides a good base.
And professional qualifications, like a CA or CFA.
Hugely beneficial. Things like being a chartered accountant in the CA, having a chartered financial analyst, CFA designation, or maybe an MBA specializing in finance. These are really valuable. They signal that you've got the quantitative skills and the kind of regulatory understanding needed to advise H&I clients credibly. Oh, and you need to be at least 18 years old.
Okay, so good foundations help.
Yeah.
But the absolute must-do, the regulatory hurdle, is the NISM certification mandated by SEBI, right?
That's the critical step. You must pass the relevant exams from the National Institute of Securities Markets, or NESM, As we talked about the different AIF categories, there are basically two main exams for distributors.
Okay, let's spell those out so people know exactly what they need to aim for.
Sure. First is the NESM Series 9XA. This one is specifically for distributing Category 1 and Category 2 AIFs. So that covers your venture capital, private equity, real estate, infrastructure funds, those sorts.
Got it. Cat IN2 is NetXA.
Then there's the NISM Series 9XEB. This one's required if you want to distribute Category 3 AIFs, so the more complex hedge funds and funds using advanced trading strategies.
And are these exams difficult to access? What's the format like?
They're actually pretty accessible, which is good news. Both exams, 9XA and 9XB, share the same structure. It's a 2-hour exam, total 100 marks, that's made up of 80 multiple choice questions and then 5 case studies with questions attached.
Passing score.
You need 60% to pass. And be aware, there is negative marking 10% penalty for wrong answers. The examination fee itself is quite reasonable, currently $1,770 per attempt.
Okay, so achievable, but you
Yeah.
need to know your stuff. What kind of knowledge base are we talking about? What do you really need to master?
It's definitely about deep understanding, not just rote memorization. You absolutely need to get your head around the differences between those 3 AIF categories, their structures, investment objectives, risks.
And the regulations.
Regulatory mastery is key. You have to know the rules inside out. That includes the minimum investment amount, the Euro crore rule we mentioned, and also the maximum number of investors allowed in a single AIF scheme, which is generally capped at 1,000.
And I imagine taxation is a big one too. H&Is will definitely care about that.
Hugely important. You need a solid grasp of the basic tax implications. You need to be able to explain clearly how Category I and T AIFs usually benefit from pass-through status.
Meaning the tax is paid by the investor directly.
Correct. The income flows through the fund and is taxed in the hands of the investor, often at more favorable capital gains rates. But contrast that with Category 3 AIFs, which are typically taxed at the fund's level itself, potentially at the highest marginal rates.
Oof, that's a big difference.
It's a critical difference. Knowing these nuances, understanding suitability for the client based on tax implications, that's non-negotiable for building trust and providing proper advice.
Okay, so getting certified with NISM is the essential entry ticket. But once you've cleared that hurdle, actually succeeding in this high-end niche,
Yeah.
it sounds like it relies heavily on softer skills, networking. This isn't a volume game.
Not at all. You're dealing with sophisticated, often very busy individuals. So strategic network building is absolutely crucial. You need to connect not just directly with potential H&I clients, but also, really importantly, with their advisors. Think chartered accountants, tax consultants, family offices. They are key referral sources.
And the fund managers themselves.
Definitely. Building strong relationships with the AIF fund managers is vital. They need to trust you, trust your judgment, and know that you'll bring them the right kind of investors who understand the strategy and the risks involved.
Trust seems to be the watchword here, especially with such large commitments and long lock-in periods sometimes. How do you actually build that trust?
It really boils down to clear communication and education. You have to be able to explain potentially very complex fund structures, the detailed risk factors, and things like lock-in periods transparently and simply.
So you're not just a salesperson.
Absolutely not. You need to operate more like a fiduciary advisor. That means genuinely prioritizing the client's needs, their risk appetite, their overall portfolio, putting that ahead of just pushing a specific product. Full transparency on fees, risks, potential downsides. That's how you build long-term trust.
And technology must play a role in managing these relationships efficiently, right?
Oh, for sure. Modern AIF distribution heavily relies on tech. You need digital platforms for things like eKYC, making the onboarding smoother, sharing documents securely online. A good CRM, customer relationship management system, is essential for tracking interactions, client history, managing the pipeline.
And for keeping up with the funds themselves.
Yes, research tools are important too. You need ways to track and analyze AIF performance, compare funds against their peers, and stay updated on market trends to ensure the advice you're giving remains sharp and relevant.
Now, while the opportunity sounds fantastic, we should be realistic. What are some of the key challenges a newcomer should expect when they enter this field, even after getting certified?
Yeah, it's important to go in with eyes open. First, the complexity we talked about means continuous learning isn't optional, it's mandatory. Product knowledge has to be deep, and the landscape keeps evolving, so you need to commit to ongoing education.
Okay, constant learning. What else?
Second, expect longer sales cycles. Convincing someone to commit a crore or more takes time. Clients will do significant due diligence. They'll want multiple conversations, maybe involve their other advisors. It requires patience and persistence.
Right. Not a quick win, typically.
And finally, there's the regulatory compliance burden. SEBI is actively refining the rules for AIFs, aiming for greater transparency and investor protection. That's good for the industry overall, but it means distributors need to constantly monitor changes and ensure they remain compliant. It adds an administrative layer.
But that regulatory evolution, while maybe a burden day to day, is actually a positive sign for the long-term health of the market, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. SEBI's focus on enhancing transparency and accountability is crucial. It builds investor confidence, makes the market more credible, and ultimately provides a much more stable and ethical foundation for distributors to build their careers on. It weeds out bad actors.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. To summarize the opportunity for someone considering this, we've got explosive market growth fueled by significant underpenetration in India. We have potentially superior compensation structures compared to traditional finance roles driven by high ticket sizes, and it's a career path that puts you right at the cutting edge of sophisticated finance, dealing with innovative asset classes and high net worth clients.
That sums it up pretty well. The market really does feel wide open right now for motivated individuals who are willing to put in the work to get certified and build those specialized skills and networks.
A really compelling picture.
But maybe for a final critical thought, something for you to keep in mind as you potentially move forward.
Okay.
While AIF distribution might feel perhaps less crowded right now compared to the huge number of mutual fund distributors, the regulatory environment is definitely professionalizing and quite quickly.
What makes you say that?
Well, look at what happened recently with distributors of portfolio management services, PMS, another high-end investment product. SEBI mandated that they need to register with APMI, the Association of Portfolio Managers in India, and get something called an APRN, an APMI registration number. It created a centralized registry and set stricter conduct standards.
I see. So why should a potential AIF distributor care about PMS rules?
Because it signals a potential trend. It shows the direction regulators might be heading. You really need to keep a close eye on whether a similar centralized registration mechanism, maybe through an industry body, could be introduced for AIF distributors in the near future.
So the implication is?
The implication is that the window for newcomers to establish themselves relatively easily before maybe more formalized requirements or industry barriers potentially increase is probably open now, but it won't stay open forever. Proactive engagement, getting certified, building your practice doing it sooner rather than later might be advantageous. Continuous learning isn't just about passing the NISM exam once, it's about anticipating these shifts to really stay ahead of the curve in this dynamic and growing ecosystem.